Welcome to The Nation. I'm Rachel Smalley. The government has released the first of 6 reports that show how it plans to grow the economy. It wants to increase exports from 30 to 40% in the next 10 years. And to help it achieve that, there will be a new branding strategy. But the brighter future that National promised at the election is beginning to look a little dim, with the dollar above 80 cents, commodity prices down 30% and unemployment continuing to rise. So is economic change really possible? The Minister in charge of Economic Development is here to meet the press. First, let's welcome our journalists, Alex Tarrant from interest.co.nz and John Hartevelt, Fairfax media political journalist. Welcome to you both. And the Economic Development Minister, Joyce. Thank you for coming in this morning. Minister,
thank you very much.
If I could start with you. This is the government's plan to create jobs, to boost the export market. What's the purpose of this report, if you like? Because anyone who's had an eye on business for perhaps the last decade, there's nothing really in this report that they don't already know.
Well, I think there is some things in the report. I think the state of the play everybody knows, there's no doubt about that, in terms of where we're up to. I think that's been reasonably well worked over. But in terms of the initiatives the government is taking, some of it is known, some of it is new, and certainly bringing it together in one place is something that business has wanted for some time. So the purpose of these reports, and as you said, there's half a dozen of them, is to update business as to where we're at. The range of things we're doing is about 55 separate initiatives in this particular one. Give them a snapshot of the reports and the progress, and ask them, what do they want to see more of, what do they want to see less of, what do they want to change. So it's part information, and it's also part of an engagement process with the business sector, which is ongoing. I was in New Plymouth yesterday, gave copies of the report to the 20 senior business people I met there. We went through a range of issues, not just in this report, but in areas like innovation, skills, capital markets, and the resources sector.
You say this is about eliciting responses from the export sector as to what they want done by the government, but it just seems a rehash of what's already going. In 2007, Labor released another very glossy export report, Platform for the Future, in which they say they talked to 100 exporters. They only talked to 100?
Goodness gracious. I've
talked to
100
major exporters, but they've been talking to exporters. The government obviously talks to exporters all the time. Yeah. So why the need for this other report when you've got this and you've got their responses as well? Why the need for another one?
Well, frankly, Alex, I think your analysis is a little once over lightly and a little superficial, because the reality is that it's a very different report. I think some of the similarities are in the terms of the analysis of the problem, and I think that's fair enough. And the reality is those guys didn't actually address the challenge of some of the things that we needed to change. And the fact they never did over 9 years in government, which is why there's a level of catch-up required now. The good news is we are getting export growth. We've had 5.5% a year in the last 4 years in terms of value of exports. We're getting very good growth in the services sector, despite the tourism challenges.
The tradable sector has been in decline
since 2005.
Yes, and it's been even in further decline since you guys got into government as well. While the non-tradable sector, but housing,
you heard of the global financial crisis, Alex? Did you hear of that?
Yes,
because actually that's quite an important element to the whole story, as is the Canterbury earthquakes. And it's important you factor those in. But there's no doubt about it, it's a challenging goal, which is going to take some time over the next 13 years to get right. And the challenge is actually New Zealand's challenge. It's not necessarily a political challenge. The challenge is, what are we prepared to do to take up what is in fact a very big opportunity? The world is a tough place to be in right now. There's no doubt about that. You've got the whole issues in Europe, you've got America, but we have a very, very big opportunity in Asia, which is very exciting for New Zealand. And the question that these reports will help lay out over the next few months, and the business sector is very interested in as well, is actually, is New Zealand prepared to take up those opportunities? That means more international investment. Frankly, that means a change to the resource management process. It means a number of things, and we're prepared to tackle those issues in a way, frankly, the previous government was not prepared to.
We haven't seen the evidence yet that the government is prepared to tackle those issues.
Well,
the point here is, and I think the point is well made, that the issues are well known. The discussion has been had. The exporters have told you what they need. So when are you going to start showing us?
I think firstly you are seeing it. So, it's being completely unfair in that respect. I was at Motunui yesterday, where they've just fired up their second methanol train. They will tell you that one of the most important reasons that they've done that is because of the environment that they can invest in this country. And the sort of things they will point to you in terms of that is the government's approach to moderate the ETS. The confidence they feel that the government isn't going to label costs on them that other countries aren't going to face. That's an important contribution to what gives them the confidence to put another couple of $100 million on the table. Talked to Todd yesterday, the Todd Corporation, in terms of some of the things that they're doing with the McKee field. Now, that's a very big investment as well. And again, they will tell you that the environment that they operate in is actually one of the best government in terms of developing business in the world right now. Well, that's very important. I mean, you can play that down if you like, but actually that's where the rubber meets the road. Where the rubber meets the road is where somebody has the confidence to invest in a business that will grow exports for New Zealand. And what they're saying to you, if you listen, is that that's what they're doing because this government has given them that confidence.
Where the rubber meets the road is also with our unemployment situation as well at the moment. 6.8, I think John Key described it as a technical rise. It still equates to around 2,000 extra jobless. When is the government going to do anything to address the issue of job matching? At the moment, this morning, I think on Trade Me, 1,360 IT jobs available, those positions not being filled. We're pumping out media and communications students. Are we training people? Clearly we aren't, to meet the market.
Well, we are, but you're right, it's not happening fast enough. And actually, we need a much greater realisation from Kiwi mums and dads and the young people as they come through that actually media and communications jobs, with the greatest respect to you folk, are not going to be where it's at over the next 10 or 15 years. Where it's at is going to be in places like engineering and science, in ICT and those sorts of areas. We're doing a lot of work in that respect. We've increased the investment in engineering and science this year, put $42 million into engineering investment. We've put additional money into science investment and no additional money into media and communications or humanities. So all those things do need to be addressed, but actually governments can't do that on their own. What I can say to people watching the program is that if you've got a young person in your life who's looking at the opportunities over the next 10 or 20 years, then the opportunities are going to be in areas like exports, trade, in engineering and construction in Christchurch, and actually we have to reorient ourselves as a country towards those careers.
It's all fine investing in the university sector. How do you get the students in secondary school being incentivised to take up those positions, and should the government have a stronger role in doing that?
Well, we do a fair bit now. I mean, one thing you can't do, Alex, as somebody who's had teenagers in my life and been one myself a long time ago, is force people to do something that they don't want to do. You have to provide them with the information.
You can encourage them. You can encourage them better. So what are you doing to encourage them in better ways at the secondary school?
I'll go through it for you. We've got a number of things going on. Firstly, the Youth Guarantee program, which is designed to pick up kids that are not actually succeeding. I said, no, just let me... Do you want a list or do you not?
Well, I want to know how you get
hold
students from secondary school into these engineering jobs and IT jobs that there's thousands of vacancies on Trade Me for.
Well, you hold, and I'll tell you about it. The reality is, there's a number of things. Firstly, in the youth guarantee space is very important. In the vocational pathways, so we've now set up these new vocational pathways that are starting next year in senior secondary school to get kids into streams such as construction, such as engineering.
In every secondary school?
Well, they'll be progressively rolled out over in the secondary schools to bring people through technology pathways as against just the pure academic pathways. So that's the second thing we're doing. The third thing we're doing is there's currently a review on in the careers program at the moment. But personally, I don't think it's enough to rely on careers advisors. I've been saying to businesses, you need to get into schools and talk about what you need. We've got partnerships going on now between the tertiary sector and the employers in a range of areas. So ICT in Wellington between Weta Digital and Victoria University, at Otago University with the natural history people down there. They've done a partnership with the university.
So are all secondary school students going to be subject to this though, or is it just very targeted schemes that you're looking at rolling out to see if they work?
Well, they won't all be subject to it, as you say. What we're saying is there's a range of things which are designed to better match people's skills to the demands of the workplace. And we all have a responsibility in that regard. That's the government and industry in particular, but also parents and the kids, because we need to all realise that the world has moved on from the situation as it was in the first decade of the century, where basically you could get a piece of paper that says anything and get yourself a job. And now we're in a situation where there's much crunchier skills required, and that takes everybody's involvement. But yes, the government's got half a dozen to 8 programs in that respect. The challenge is, can we all make that move? And part of the process of these reports is to make sure that we do address those issues as a country, and I think successfully this morning.
If you're going to grow businesses, though, clearly you need the right people, as you've just mentioned, but also you're going to need capital. Where's that capital going to come from?
Well, the capital basically comes from people who see opportunities to make a profit. I mean, fundamentally, that's how it works. It's always been the way when I've been in business, is that if people see a way in which they can make a return on an investment, then they'll turn up. The challenge for New Zealand is in a couple of areas. Firstly, we have to be very welcoming of international capital. If we're serious about jobs and growth in this country, and this is the point you were making before, then the only way you can do that sustainably is to grow the amount we trade with the rest of the world. In order to do that, and we've talked about the target of getting from 30% to 40% over the next 12 or 13 years, then the challenge of that is actually to bring sufficient capital in. And if we say we're only going to restrict ourselves to capital generated within this country, well, we've got never in a million years going to make it by 2025.
But we do want to see some capital coming from New Zealand, so we don't want to ignore that space, do we?
It's
what about expanding KiwiSaver, the way it invests? What about expanding the super fund?
Well, with the greatest respect, if you're saying that the public sector is a way to increase capital investment, that's not really going to do it. At the margins,
well, KiwiSaver is private investment, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the margins, it'll help a little bit. The real opportunity there is, in fact, we have a stock exchange in this country which performs very poorly relative to its peers. We have a very low percentage of the New Zealand economy listed on the New Zealand Stock Exchange by comparison to all other OECD countries.
So how do you fix that? How do you get that
one
going?
thing you do is the mixed ownership model. You get those companies. One of the unsung benefits of the mixed ownership model is to get some good, strong utility companies onto the New Zealand Stock Exchange to encourage investment in that. We've had some issues with the stock exchange, the finance company issues historically, and the opportunity to rebuild our stock exchange on the back of the mixed ownership model companies, I think, is a very significant one. And then we can also get other companies into the market as well. And we need to do that if we're going to provide a domestic source of capital.
OK, we do have to leave it there just for the moment, though. We will be back after the break. We'll continue our interview with the Minister in just a moment.